Picture this, a terrified 7-year-old girl, standing behind a one-way mirror, her tiny hand clutching her mother's. In front of her, 10 men in a police lineup. Somewhere among them is the monster who tried to end her life. What she doesn't know is that he's already murdered 2 other little girls, and walked away free. If she can't point him out now, he will kill again. This is the story of Rachael Watts, and one of the most disturbing failures of British justice. A killer who tricked the courts, celebrated his freedom at a pub, and even marched in protests demanding justice for the very victims he created. But arrogance always leaves cracks. And when evil gets too confident, it makes mistakes. February 4th, 1990. Brighton, England. 7-year-old Rachael is having the kind of perfect childhood day that parents treasure. The sun is shining, she's got her brand new white roller skates on, and her dad has just handed her a crisp £1 note to buy sweets from a local shop. Her father waves from the front garden as she glides away, completely unaware that he's just watched his daughter skate toward a nightmare that will haunt their family for decades. Rachael takes a wrong turn. In a neighborhood she doesn't know well, panic starts to creep in. But then she spots salvation, a man fixing his car on the roadside. Her dad's a mechanic, so this feels safe, familiar. She approaches this stranger and asks for directions. The man looks up, and without saying a single word, he grabs her and throws her into the trunk of his car like she weighs nothing at all. The trunk slams shut, and terror floods every inch of Rachael's small body. But here's what's remarkable about this little girl. Even in absolute horror, her mind stays sharp. As the car speeds away, she starts looking around the cramped, dark space illuminated only by the red glow of brake lights. She finds a can of WD-40 and a hammer. Most kids would freeze, but Rachael starts hammering on the trunk lid as hard as she can, screaming at the top of her lungs. The response she gets will chill you to the bone. "Shut up or I'll kill you." But Rachael doesn't give up. She realizes something crucial. Her roller skates will slow her down if she needs to run. So she starts untying them in the darkness, preparing for whatever comes next. This 7-year-old is literally planning her own escape while being kidnapped. If this story is already gripping you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think parents should teach their children about stranger danger. Your engagement helps us bring you more incredible survival stories like this one. Safety tip: teach children to never approach strangers alone, even for directions. If lost, children should look for a police officer, security guard, or go into a store and ask the staff for help. Always establish a family code word that only trusted people would know. What Rachael doesn't know is that this isn't this man's first time hurting a child. 4 years earlier, 2 other little girls weren't as fortunate as she would be. But to understand just how close Rachael came to becoming another statistic, we need to go back 4 years earlier, to October 1986. 2 9-year-old best friends, Karen Hadaway and Nicola, are playing near their homes when they simply vanish. The entire community mobilizes. Over 150 police officers and countless volunteers scour every inch of the wooded areas around Brighton. Parents clutch their own children tighter, praying these girls will be found alive. After nearly 24 hours, the worst fears are confirmed. The girls are discovered in Wild Park, arranged as if they're peacefully sleeping. But they're not sleeping, they're dead, positioned deliberately by someone with a sixth sense of staging. The community is shattered. Who could do this to innocent children? Here's where our story takes a disturbing turn. Among the searchers helping look for these girls is a local man named Russell Bishop. He's known around the neighborhood, petty criminal, bit of a joke really, always getting into minor trouble. But when police officer Paul Smith encounters Bishop during the search, something doesn't sit right. Bishop makes a comment that stops the officer cold. "If I find them and they're dead, I'll get nicked, won't I?" What kind of person says something like that while searching for missing children? Why is his mind already jumping to them being dead and him being blamed? It's the kind of slip that reveals more than intended. The next day, Bishop is still searching when 2 boys start screaming that they've found the bodies. Bishop runs toward the voices faster than anyone else, faster than the police officer can keep up. When they reach the scene, Officer Smith has to physically step between Bishop and the dead girls. Why was this man so eager to get close to the bodies? The evidence against Bishop starts piling up immediately. Multiple witnesses place him in the area when the girls disappeared. A blue sweatshirt found on the trail leading to his house contains fibers from the victim's clothing and ivy spores from the murder scene. The sweatshirt also has red paint stains. The exact same specialty paint Bishop was seen using on friends' cars just days before. But here's the smoking gun. When police bring the sweatshirt to Bishop's house, his girlfriend Jenny Johnson opens the door and immediately says, "Oh, you've brought Russell's sweatshirt back." She has no idea she's just sealed her boyfriend's fate. The officers take a sworn statement. She signs it without hesitation, and boom, they have proof Bishop owned the murder weapon. Safety tip: if you witness something suspicious during a search for missing persons, report it to authorities immediately. Trust your instincts. If someone's behavior seems off during a crisis, don't ignore that feeling. The case seemed ironclad, but sometimes the justice system fails in the most spectacular way possible. The prosecution is confident. The community demands justice. Everyone knows Bishop is guilty. The trial begins in November 1987, and the entire country is watching. These innocent girls, dubbed the babes in the wood by the media, deserve justice. Bishop's going down, right? Wrong. When Jenny Johnson takes the witness stand, she completely changes her story. The woman who confidently identified the sweatshirt as Russell's now claims she was forced to sign that statement. She tells the court that police coerced her, that Russell never owned that sweatshirt. The prosecution knows she's lying to protect her boyfriend, but they can't prove it. Without that sweatshirt connection, the defense argues anyone could have committed these murders. The case that seemed rock-solid crumbles in real time. After 4 weeks of testimony, the jury delivers a verdict that shocks everyone. Not guilty. Russell Bishop puts his hands in the air and shouts, "I'm innocent," as he leaves the courthouse. Then he does something that shows you exactly what kind of person we're dealing with. He goes straight to the pub across from the courthouse to celebrate with his brothers and girlfriend. While two families mourn their murdered daughters, the man who killed them is buying rounds and laughing. But here's the most terrifying part. There's a law called double jeopardy that means Bishop can never be tried again for these murders, even if police find absolute proof of his guilt. He's legally untouchable for Karen and Nicola's deaths. And he knows it. What happens next is almost unbelievable in its audacity. Bishop starts playing the victim. He gets paid £15,000 by a tabloid to tell his story as someone wrongfully accused. But it gets worse. He actually starts suggesting that Nicola's father might be the real killer. This grieving dad suddenly finds his house covered in graffiti calling him a murderer. The community turns on him while the actual killer counts his money. Then Bishop does something so brazen it defies belief. When the victims' families organize protest marches demanding the case be reopened, Bishop shows up to join them. He's literally marching alongside the parents of children he murdered, pretending to demand justice for crimes he committed. The families have to watch their daughter's killer smirk for news cameras while using their grief as a platform to improve his public image. February 2, 1990, Sussex police officially close the case. They send Russell Bishop a letter confirming the investigation is over. Someone has gotten away with murder, and everyone knows it. 2 days later, on February 4th, Rachael Watts asks a stranger for directions. This is where you need to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because what happens next will show you just how dangerous it is when killers walk free. Drop a comment below about whether you think the justice system failed these families. I read every single one. Safety tip: be aware of local crime in your area. If someone dangerous is released or acquitted in your community, stay extra vigilant. Trust law enforcement's warnings about potential threats, even if someone was legally cleared. But Russell Bishop's freedom was about to come to an end, thanks to one incredibly brave little girl who refused to become his next victim. The timing isn't coincidence. Bishop has spent 4 years as a free man, legally protected from his past crimes. He's gotten comfortable, confident, maybe even a little bored. When he sees this small girl on roller skates asking for help, something dark takes over. After throwing Rachael in his trunk, Bishop drives to Devil's Dyke, a remote area 7 miles from her home. What happens next is too horrific to describe in detail, but what you need to know is that this monster doesn't just assault a 7-year-old. He tries to strangle her to death when he's finished. But Rachael is tougher than he anticipated. When he wraps his hands around her throat, she fights. Not enough to stop him from cutting off her air, but enough to remember every detail of his face. When she blacks out, Bishop carries her unconscious body into the woods and leaves her for dead. Here's what Bishop doesn't count on. Rachael wakes up. Naked, bleeding, covered in bruises and barely able to stand, this incredible little girl stumbles out of those woods. She's dizzy, falling over, hypothermic, but she keeps moving. When she sees car headlights, her first thought is that it's him coming back to finish the job. But she realizes she'll freeze to death if she doesn't get help. The young couple who find her are horrified. A completely naked child covered in blood, asking, "Are you going to kidnap me?" Through tears. They wrap her in blankets and rush her to safety, but the damage is done. Bishop thinks he's killed his third victim. Safety tip: if you find someone who appears to be a victim of violence, call emergency services immediately but avoid disturbing potential evidence. Provide comfort and reassurance, but let professionals handle medical care and evidence collection. This time, though, there would be no escaping justice. The evidence was about to tell a story that no lies could cover up. The investigation moves fast this time. Police have a survivor who can identify her attacker. When they share details about a white male with a mustache driving a red car, detectives immediately think of Russell Bishop. And when officers arrive at his house, they find him frantically scrubbing his car like his life depends on it. When they pop open the trunk, everything Rachael described is there. The WD-40, the hammer, even chip marks where she'd been pounding on the lid trying to escape. There are clothing fibers matching what she was wearing, along with blood and semen that directly link her to Bishop's car. This time, the evidence can't be explained away. But Bishop still has to be identified by his victim. 3 days after the attack, Rachael stands behind that one-way mirror, holding her mother's hand, looking at a lineup of 10 men. She's asked if she recognizes anyone, and without hesitation, she points to Russell Bishop. This time, there's no girlfriend changing her story, no legal loopholes, no way out. On December 13, 1990, Russell Bishop is found guilty of kidnapping, sexual assault, and attempted murder. The judge sentences him to life imprisonment. Finally, justice. But here's what's heartbreaking. Everyone in that courtroom knows Bishop should have been behind bars 4 years earlier. Karen Hadaway and Nicola should still be alive. Rachael should never have been hurt. If the system had worked the first time, 3 children would have been spared unimaginable trauma. The families of Karen and Nicola watch Bishop get sentenced and feel no joy, only anger that it took another child nearly dying for justice to be served. They promise to keep fighting for their daughters, even though double jeopardy means Bishop can never be tried again for murder. For over a decade, that seemed to be the end of the story. Bishop rots in prison for what he did to Rachael, the murder case stays closed, and everyone tries to move on. But in 2004, Rachael gets a phone call that changes everything. Bishop is up for parole. Safety tip: stay informed about the parole status of offenders who have harmed you or your community. Victim notification systems exist in many areas to alert you when someone is being considered for release. What nobody expected was that advances in science would soon give the families of Karen and Nicola one final chance at justice. She's 22 years old now, trying to build a normal life, when she discovers that life sentence doesn't actually mean life. Bishop could be released after serving just 14 years because technically, he didn't succeed in killing her. The news is terrifying. Rachael becomes convinced he'll come back to finish what he started. But then something miraculous happens. In 2005, the 800-year-old double jeopardy law is repealed. For the first time in British legal history, someone can be retried for the same crime if new evidence emerges. The families of Karen and Nicola finally have hope, but they need to act fast before Bishop gets parole. The new investigation focuses on that blue sweatshirt from 1986. DNA science has advanced dramatically since the original trial. In 2013, scientists test the inside of a tear on the sweatshirt's cuff and find Russell Bishop's DNA. But there's a problem. They can't prove the sweatshirt wasn't contaminated during the original investigation, so this evidence won't hold up in court. However, investigators remember something crucial. When the girls' bodies were found in 1986, forensic pathologists had taken tape samples from their arms and sealed them away. Back then, they didn't have the technology to test for DNA. Now they do. When scientists examine those 27-year-old samples, they make a discovery that changes everything. Mixed DNA profiles showing both Russell Bishop's genetic material and Karen Hadaway's. Bishop's DNA is literally on the arm of his victim, preserved since 1986. In May 2016, Bishop is taken from his prison cell thinking his parole has finally been approved. Instead, he's arrested for the murders of Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows. After 30 years, he's going to face justice for his first crimes. The retrial begins in October 2018. Bishop's defense tries to explain away the DNA evidence, claiming he touched the girls when checking their pulse after the bodies were found. But investigators have been waiting decades for this moment. They reveal that multiple witnesses saw Bishop at the scene, but none of them saw him go within 15 feet of the bodies. The truth becomes clear. Bishop wanted to check the girls' pulse so he could later explain why his DNA was on them. The problem was, he never got close enough during the official discovery. His DNA was there because he put it there when he murdered them. The prosecution reveals one final piece of evidence: sexually explicit letters Bishop wrote to a 13-year-old while on trial in 1987. As these letters are read aloud in court, Bishop starts shouting from the defendant's dock, demanding a mistrial. But it's too late. On December 10, 2018, after less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returns with their verdict: guilty of murdering Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows. Russell Bishop is finally convicted for the crimes everyone knew he committed 32 years earlier. He's sentenced to an additional 36 years in prison. The families who never stopped fighting for their daughters finally get the justice they deserved. But there's no celebration, only relief that their girls can finally rest in peace. Barry Fellows, Nicola's father, says he can finally tell his daughter to go to her angel bed and go to sleep, because she doesn't have to worry anymore. Safety tip: DNA evidence can remain viable for decades when properly preserved. If you're ever a victim of a serious crime, know that even if justice isn't immediate, advances in forensic science may provide answers years later. The conviction brought closure to the families, but for Rachael, the real journey was just beginning. For Rachael, Bishop's conviction brings a different kind of closure. She spent years struggling with agoraphobia, unable to leave her house because of nightmares that he would escape and come for her. Bishop's final conviction doesn't erase her trauma, but it gives her permission to start healing. In 2022, Russell Bishop dies of cancer in prison at age 55, ensuring he'll never hurt another child. After his death, Rachael decides to go public with her story, participating in a Sky documentary called The Girl Who Caught a Killer. For the first time, she reveals details about her attack that she couldn't share as a child. Today, Rachael is building the life that Bishop tried to steal from her. She's married with children, slowly overcoming the agoraphobia that kept her prisoner for decades. She says she fell in love with her husband because he showed her what it meant to truly be loved. She's proud of her children and hopes that by sharing her story, she can finally put the past behind her. Rachael's courage as a 7-year-old didn't just save her own life. It prevented Russell Bishop from killing again. Her willingness to face her attacker in that police lineup ensured a predator was finally stopped. And her survival provided the crucial evidence that eventually brought justice for Karen and Nicola. This case shows us that evil can hide in plain sight, that justice can be delayed but not denied, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most power. Rachael Watts was just 7 years old when she stared evil in the face and refused to let it win. Her bravery changed everything, and her story proves that even in our darkest moments, hope and justice can prevail. What strikes me most about this case is how Bishop's arrogance ultimately led to his downfall. If he had disappeared after beating the murder charges, he might never have been caught. But he couldn't resist inserting himself into the victim's family's grief, couldn't stop taking credit for being wrongfully accused, and ultimately couldn't resist hurting another child. Evil, it seems, always overplays its hand. Rachael Watts caught a serial killer not through detective work or forensic science, but through pure courage and an unbreakable will to survive. Her story reminds us that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the most powerful weapon against darkness is simply refusing to give up. Safety tip: survivors of trauma often develop PTSD or other conditions like agoraphobia. Professional therapy, support groups, and gradual exposure therapy can help reclaim your life. Healing is possible, but it takes time and the right support system. If Rachael's incredible story of survival and justice moved you, make sure to subscribe for more true crime cases that show the power of human resilience. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about courage in the face of evil, and let me know in the comments what other cases you'd like me to cover. Your support helps bring these important stories to light and honors the memory of victims like Karen and Nicola while celebrating survivors like Rachel.